Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Open Take, where we discuss upcoming films and shows. I'm your host, Lizeth Tello, and today I'm joined by my younger brother and movie nerd, Carlos Tello. Today we'll be talking about the new upcoming film, Zootopia 2. Welcome to the show, Carlos, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
It's great to have you with us. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of today's topic, why don't you tell our audience a bit about yourself and what got you so interested in film in the first place?
Okay, that is an interesting curiosity. Well, all I can say for now are three important, though simple details to summarize this enthusiasm that I have gained over time. So, number one, there are many magical experiences that we all get from major film studios that doesn't just bring entertainment, it brings a lesson. And when I describe a lesson, I don't just mean by the story or the characters in it, but how they make them. And those lessons, they didn't really come from the story or the characters that were featured in it. It came from those who made them. It came from the minds that gave life to what we could only imagine. The second thing is that because animation has evolved so largely over the years, I say it has been too impressive to ignore. But the ones that are told by Walt Disney Animation Studios, for example, it has so many more spectacles to offer. And Zootopia is one of them. And that leads me to number three. You see, I'm not really considered the average enthusiast for these kind of things because, well, one can say I am a proud member of the furry fandom. I don't just want to be entertained. I also wish to see the amusing worlds where animals can represent us more directly through their anthropomorphism in fiction. So, with that being said, I'm just going to say Zootopia 2 has to be a must see. As far as my passion for the film industry goes, I didn't necessarily develop these kind of views on my own. It took legends that taught us a lot of things. I'm talking about Steven Spielberg, Tim Burton, Peter Jackson, Guillermo del Toro, so many of them. And they designed these worlds through minds of their own. It inspired me to share this passion with those who think alike. And filming is, it may not be for everyone, as I understand, but it's a unique way of storytelling. When you think of films, you don't just think of the camera, you think about the vision that it captures. I suppose that was their lesson to me, even if I've never met them. And I find that beautiful.
Well, considering all that, I'd say you're in for a treat, as well as the rest of our listeners, because based on the trailers, it seems like Zootopia 2 is gonna touch on some really important themes and tell a really good story. For those who are unaware, Zootopia 2 is set to be released in theaters on November 26th. It is a direct sequel to Zootopia, which, to summarize the film, it is about a bunny named Judy Hopps. Through sheer determination and hard work, she becomes the first ever bunny cop in the city of Zootopia. And in a bid to prove herself, she partners up with a local con artist fox named Nick Wilde, and the duo sets off to solve a difficult case involving 14 missing predator animals. During their adventure, the two uncover a conspiracy to undo the peaceful coexistence between predators and prey, which tests Judy's and Nick's bond and forces them to learn to look past preconceived stereotypes and prejudices. It seems, based on the trailers, that Zootopia 2 will follow a similar theme. And so, after watching the trailers, how do you feel, Carlos, about the new film in comparison to the first one?
Now that we get to see another set of two different worlds in one story, it really is an amazing feeling. I feel glad that even though it's going to take a similar rough turn, it still means that diversity is guaranteed. So the fact that people have complained that maybe it shouldn't have featured reptiles because they wanted an all mammal stuff, I find that ridiculous. And it's even more amazing that the filmmakers had the guts to include this sort of narrative, even if it was going to piss off a lot of fans. I, for one, am glad that they made this decision. The union between the mammals and the reptiles, as seen in those trailers and TV spots, I like it.
I am excited too, I'll admit. I feel like it's really interesting that they're going to be adding reptiles to the film, and I'm curious to see what they do with that as well. Speaking of reptiles and newer characters, it seems like there's going to be a lot of new characters within this film, but also returning ones as well. For example, we're going to see Flash the Sloth again, Nick and Judy, obviously, Chief Bogo and Gazelle, and so many other characters from the first film. Of these returners, who are you most excited to see again, and what do you hope to see in terms of their character development?
I've always been rooting for Nick Wilde throughout the first story. He was originally supposed to be the main protagonist of the first movie before it came out, and they told an interesting narrative in that earlier version of the first movie. But now that we saw the first movie in actuality and we saw his emotional development, and now we got a glimpse of even more in the trailers, I just cannot help but to root for that guy. Like, he did so much to combat against his own prejudices, even towards himself. Because if we notice in the first movie, he hinted self hatred and self submission to what he had to suffer in terms of discrimination. That's why he was a con artist before he became a cop, before he became a noble civilian. So, considering that he was able to overcome those emotional obstacles, even to the point where he has such a close bond with someone who should have been his enemy, I just cannot help but to root for that guy the most.
Well, I'm sure a lot of us are going to be rooting for poor old Nick because I'd say he had a great amount of character development as well within the first film. So I'm curious to see how the new one will continue that growth. And going back to the new characters that I had mentioned previously, like Gary the Snake, Mayor Windancer, and the Linksley family, what are your impressions of these characters and what roles do you think they will play in the story?
Okay, so from what I understand, Mayor Windancer might be a doofus. I mean, no offense to the actor Patrick Warburton or however his name is. He used to play a lot of goofs in his time, in his prime, you know.
Yeah.
So the fact that we got to see him in action again, but in an animated movie, I just want to keep feeling that for his characters, because we've seen Kronk from The Emperor's New Groove. We've seen a bunch of characters that this actor in particular had played. They made him famous because they were goofs. If Mayor Windancer is going to have an important role, I would assume that he is rather a misdirected character who ends up helping the villain. But I kind of assume that he might fall into a path that makes him realize that working for a villain might be a mistake. I could be wrong, of course. As for Gary the Snake, he's such a nice fella. So all I can say for that snake is that he's going to be the one that the protagonist must defend at all costs. He deserves justice in any way possible. As for the Linksley family, I do have one interesting thing to say about the family. I feel like it was just a bit early that they revealed that one of these lynxes was a villain. I think it would have been more thrilling to see that part in the actual movie itself.
And then for the final question, going back to a bit of what you explained earlier, the first film touched on themes of racism, prejudice, and acceptance. And based on the trailers for Zootopia 2, it seems like those themes will be touched on again. Could you expand on your thoughts a little bit from earlier about this? And do you think there's like a risk of repetition here? What do you hope to see in terms of execution or how they organized everything?
Well, I want to say from the bottom of my heart that it is never too wrong to readdress something that is important to know. We need that message sent out there as much as possible. It's better to accept your neighbor and your coworker and your family for who they are, even if they are different from you. So maybe if people were to just complain about, oh, but it's a repeated message for every film, good, let it repeat. I don't see any risk of repeating that message whatsoever. If racism needs to be addressed, let it be addressed as many times as possible. Let it be told for the sake of knowing what not to repeat in real life. And I think that's something that the main protagonists of this upcoming film are going to have to do eventually.
Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. That's all the time we have for now, unfortunately. Thank you again, Carlos, for joining us.
Thank you.
And to our audience, thanks for listening in. We hope you'll tune in again next time.